Okay, I think I will call this meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. We will start with roll call. So to my knowledge, there's just Naive, Andrea, and Rihan that are missing. Right. And so we'll move to the agenda approval. Let's see. 1 second, I'm sorry, my cat is scratching the door.
You all can still look at the agenda if you want.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none. Oh, Bjorn?
Just had a quick question. For the base funding adjustment, did we manage to get a question and answer session, or are we just going to the adjustment?
I'm going to fill you all in when we get there, but we'll make the decision. Heather is available to come next week, not this week. So jumping ahead on this here.
Okay, seeing no other discussion, we'll move to a vote on approval of the agenda. Can I entertain a motion?
Point of order, no one actually motioned or seconded, so we have to do that before we vote. So yeah.
True.
Was it a motion to approve? Okay, motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, motion by Judy, and is there a second?
Second.
We'll give that to Stephanie. And all those in favor? Sorry, 1 second, I gotta check for the virtual hands raised. And okay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? And motion passes, I believe it's 7-0-0, unless I'm wrong, Joey? Okay. Then we will move to the approval of minutes. So if you all could briefly look at that from last week. And if there is any discussion. And seeing none, then we can entertain a motion to approve last week's minutes. Joffrey motions, and is there a second? Seconded by Judy. All those in favor of approving last week's minutes? All opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes 7-0-0, and then we will move to reports. As a chair, I have no reports, so we will move to the advisors.
I do not have any reports.
I don't have anything other than what was coming up. Hopefully you all stayed safe and warm last week. I know we had a meeting right before everything on the Ellensburg campus shut down. So glad you all stuck in there and are here doing well this week.
And Joffrey, do you have any reports for us today?
No, not from CWU, no.
Okay, then we will move to other business with communications received. No communications are received. Then we will move to first call of public comment.
I just want to say Happy New Year, public comment. Way to be, make the best of it. And thanks for all your work, everyone.
Yes, Happy New Year, Dr. Hyatt and everyone. Any other public comment?
I guess, Deanna, I would offer just for the information for this group is all of the S&A funded budget directors in student success met earlier today. Lacey was a part of that meeting. And we talked about the process and the protocols that we're going to follow regarding the 5% budget reduction And then thinking through next year's budget reduction as well at a 10%. I'll be working with the 3 associate deans in student success. And we're hopeful that within a couple of weeks, we'll have some numbers put together that will meet that expectation from this board. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time with that. And we'll give you some things to take a look at here shortly within the next couple of weeks. So thank you.
Thank you, Dean Gregg. And seeing no other public comments, I believe, we will move to new business, but I believe there's no new business as well. So then we will move to old business on the base funding adjustment for the Sarah Spurgeon Art Gallery.
Yep, as I gave a little preview a minute ago in response to Bjorn's question, I did reach out to Heather from the art gallery. She's wasn't available to come this week due to a prior engagement, but said she's absolutely willing to come in next week. And so we have her tentatively on the agenda to come in next week to be able to answer any questions, and then we can vote after that point. So that's the only update, unless you all have additional things you want to discuss or things you want to send in advance.
Okay, and then I think we can move on to program reviews.
Absolutely. And so this is just a follow-up from last week. I know we talked about the program reviews, the change and how we're going to do those. And that really our goal now is to identify a set of questions that we want to send out to all of the base funding units to ask them to answer and respond in writing for us to look at. And then we can ask follow-up. A few people did submit electronically some feedback and some questions within there. They're pretty brief, and so I'll just kind of share them with the group, and then this is really open to any others. Again, if you want to take a look, it was the document, not from this week, it would have been in last week's materials, the program review, if you want to look at the questions we've used previously to go off of. But really the feedback that was given within it, and I'll share this, but obviously some of you are here, so you can give more detail within that, is really to look at something along the lines of how does your program align with the purpose of S&A funding, and giving some specifics outlining from our policy on what the purpose is. And so identifying that, asking a question that's in here, and I did appreciate this along the lines of talking about extenuating circumstances, but something, and I think I slightly reworded it from what was in there, is, are there any circumstances or challenges that are currently impacting your ability to use your base funding allocation this year? So that way we have an idea, is there something, since they'll be reporting on the year that we're actively in. And then the other ones on here is, if we are going to ask questions about university's goals that we talked about, I think we should include a concrete reference to what goal, not just leave it open. And so whether that's giving the university's mission statement, whether it's something along those lines within there, but similar to the one about tying it back to S&A funding, giving in there that specific example so they know what we're looking at and what they're looking at. And then the other two were kind of open-ended, was really wanting to include a question about how the groups are supporting students and how the groups would be affected by the budget reductions that we have. And so I played a little bit with the tweaking of the words. And so some of the questions I have right now, I didn't put the mission vision one in there yet, but how's your program supporting the students? Please be specific. Given the budget reductions taking place and continuing for the remainder of the funding cycle, please tell us what specific impacts those reductions have had on your program compared to what was originally planned and included in your initial base funding request. So really seeing where there was that difference. Some maybe are able to absorb it, so we're not really seeing. Others I anticipate would. How does your program align with the purpose of S&A funding as outlined in giving that paragraph? Are there any circumstances or challenges? I mentioned that. Oh, and then the other one I did say from feedback was talking about how many students, and specifically unique students, are accessing or using the services or benefiting from it. So the other question, how many unique CW students utilize your program or services? How do you gather these metrics? If you do not, what is preventing you from getting that data, and how are you determining usage by CWU students? So those are what I pulled from some of the feedback we already got. There's a few others that I have highlighted from what's on there that I would recommend, but I want to kind of leave it up to you all. In looking at those questions, are there other ones that jump out to you, or even just a bullet point of I'd really like them to be answering this or telling us this piece of information each year? So I'll open it up.
So Joey, my only thought was that there was one about the, how does it meet the university goals? And maybe we need to say the current ones. I mean, we're creating new ones, right? Or mission and all of that. So maybe that's going to change this year, but maybe it's just in relation to past goals. Maybe it's minor.
No, I think that's going to be helpful. I mean, I would say, Greg, having something in there like that, especially as the university is looking largely at things, I think us asking that question is absolutely important.
Other than that, sounds great.
I know others may be thinking. The other ones that I would recommend we add in there is from the supplemental we did 2 years ago, 3 years ago almost now. Question 7 and 11, if you're looking at it, but how do you assess the effectiveness of the service and activities you provide to students? And is student input collected and used in this assessment process? Because everyone's going to have a little bit different piece of how they assess that if they do. And I think we were intentional going into the last base funding that we wanted these programs to be assessed. And then the other one, number 11, is what are your program goals or learning operational objectives? Because they're going to be very different. And so having them clearly state that, and how are you assessing the effectiveness of your program in achieving those targets? So it's really leaving it open to each area to tell us what is your goal and purpose, and how are you affecting whether you meet your goal and targets? Because everyone's going to be different. And so again, using sub-custodial versus circuit counting versus campus activities versus the art gallery, those are all going to be dramatically different on what their goals are and how they might assess success in that. So I think us asking it is helpful, and then looking each year where it's at. But that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I was also thinking along that line, but I was, I had framed the question, I just wrote it down, and it was like, how do you assess your impact to the student experience here at Central, and if so, how have you been utilizing your resources effectively and efficiently in order to create those student experiences here at Central? And so let's sort of like along that line too.
So I do have a suggestion, and please, committee, and if you think we shouldn't do this, please let me know. But I'm almost tempted to take out question number 9, which is what would be the impact to students if this program's funding was increased. And I just don't know if it's necessarily relevant because right now we're not necessarily looking at increasing any program areas. And so it might just be confusing to those areas.
Bjorn?
Yeah, that one definitely looks like it would be confusing. One thing that might be worth asking is like, what are the, I don't want to give them a false hope because there's a budget crisis, but it feels worthwhile to ask, what are like next steps for your program? What might you want to do in the future? I don't know if that's relevant to how we evaluate the base funding though, so we could leave it out if need be.
Yeah, I agree with Bjorn because, like, I don't know, even if I feel like it's good to still note that even if we know funding wise, we can't quite do that, just to have it in writing, like that's what they want to do. And then that way when we have funding, we have that documented and you know what I mean, with new members each year and things like that. I think that would just be good to at least document.
I think those are all really a good way of kind of answering the having the same question, but a little bit better. I do have one other suggestion for questions, and unfortunately, I think I will have to make Joey wordsmith this a little bit for all of us. But essentially, I think there would be a good question to ask about utilization. So, who utilizes either the service? You know, what type of students? So do these programs service, for example, center students and Ellensburg campus? Do they primarily service first gen? Do they primarily service, you know, what type of utilization do they capture? Because I think it would be good for us to know what types of students would be interested in these types of services.
I can definitely work on wordsmithing that.
Should that be like a multiple choice? I mean, so that we give them a list of options?
I would probably leave it a little open, Greg, because I'm going to be honest with you all. My guess is a lot of these areas may not have that data the first year. They may be able to say the number of students, or they may be able to give a general sense of like our residential students or our transfer students or our Ellensburg or our center. But getting down to the more detail that I would love as someone who loves data, I want to leave it open. I may give what type of students demographics and give a few of those as examples of what we would like to know, like what is the makeup of the students that is are primarily utilizing your service or program. But yeah, I'll play with it. The only other thing I was going to say, and you all can think of questions, my plan was getting the feedback here tonight, playing with a little bit of the wording here and sending it to you all before next week's meeting, just to make sure, hey, is this accurate with what you all were thinking? We can tweak it, and then we'll send it out after next week's meeting in case we need any last fine tuning next week. Is keep in mind the way that this is going to work. So I don't know, and I'm going to say this and let Lacey jump in if she thinks so, but whether or not we want or need a question specific to the budget. So the program review is going to be, we're going to send these out for this year, meaning I'm going to ask that the art gallery provide and answer all these questions as it relates to this year that we're in right now. They also have to submit their annual financial, the fiscal report, but that for this year, that would come around next fall. And so we'll have that data. I don't know from the program review if there's a specific question you all want to know, knowing that every year we're going to do this, they're going to be about halfway through the budget year, because it's going to be normally winter quarter that we'll put out to ask for all these questions. Is there something we want to know from them at that point or not? Also knowing where we're talking about with budget reductions, that most areas are going to be pretty tightly strapped.
The only budget, which is hard because this is somewhat already asked, so bear with me for a second, would be any current vacancies. And I know that means that they're going to be answering that multiple times, but it would be a nice way to capture it because it's about 6 months into the fiscal year. So if there was any full-time vacancies, we'd at least be able to be notified.
Any other thoughts, ideas, feedback, things you want to make sure to ask? I think we have a good list. Again, what I'll do is I'll work on typing these up and really try and send them out to you by the end of this week or the very start of next week, so you all can see them. Again, what I have on here now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 questions. Which is a good amount. I mean, that's a lot for them to give us information on. We can always add more, or if you feel like they're redundant, we can say, hey, can we tweak this or not? But I'll shoot those out to you all prior to next week's meeting. So ideally, if you see a weird edit, you can send it an email and I'll bring it to the meeting. But ideally next week, it's a, yep, this all looks good. And then we'll send it out to all of the base funding units. So if you think of other questions, though, in the meantime, definitely send them to me via email. And I can include those and send it out to the group and say, hey, we added this one. Because Judy, I mean, I won't call you out, Judy, but if Judy sends it, like I added this one, I think it's great. This was not discussed at the meeting. Let me know if you don't want it in here type thing.
Okay, if there's no more discussion on this, then we can move forward to second call for public comment. And seeing none, we can move to adjourn this meeting. Can I entertain a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Judy,
Second.
seconded by Stephanie. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting? All opposed? That's my neighbor's dog, sorry.
I thought it was my dog outside, so it makes you feel better.
There's a
Any
dog
abs-
barking outside where I am too, so that was really weird.
Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes 7-0-0. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
At 5:54 for Haley when she's watching the recording.
5:54, Haley. Yes. Okay.
Have a great night and week all.